Welcome back to We Know Scripted TV, where today we know Star Wars Skeleton Crew, Episode 3. Very interesting as an astrogation problem. My name is Grace Leeder, but of course, I'm not alone. I'm here with Owen Knight. Owen, how are you doing? I have someone called you Owen Jedi Knight, I believe. I believe that's a new terminology I
I've
might
never
call
gotten
you.
that one before, but
Yeah.
would be honored at the title. Yeah, I'm
Yes.
doing good. It was a fun episode. Definitely more in the more like setup-ish kind of category of TV episodes, but I still had fun. There were still some moments I laughed out loud, and it was great. I think the creature work is awesome. Loved Kim, but it was fun. It was fun. It was short, but it was setting the table nicely for I think what will be a fun season.
Yeah, sometimes I look at a Star Wars episode. Actually, this is a Disney thing where I'm like, oh, it's like 38 minutes. And then you can do this thing where you can like cover and it gives you a preview because I do this because I need to know how long the episode is. They have like 9-minute credits normally.
Right.
It's like a movie feature credits. So typically, if you're seeing it at like 38 minutes, it's probably actually like 31, 32, So
Right.
yeah. This episode I did like. I would agree with you that I feel like we like sort of slow down a little bit, but also at the same time, the one thing I was very impressed by is that I feel like some of the stuff we were talking about last week that I thought might be full season stuff very quickly became like was out in the open this week, which I
Right.
think is great. I think if I'm theorizing about something, we're at the point where I kind of want you to tell me whether that's true or not, and then come up with new questions. And I feel like the propulsion of the show to me feels like, although I do think this was like not as good as the first two episodes, I still thought it was pretty good, and I feel like moves things forward in a way that doesn't feel wheel spinny. Owen, it's kind of my take from episode 3.
Yep, I'm with you. And I guess we can just go ahead and say the headline being that Jod comes out and says he's not a Jedi. And we spent a good chunk of time last week saying, like, I wonder what the deal is. Did he survive Order 66? Is he just a Force user pulling a swindle on them? And yeah, it's nice that they resolved that so quickly. And I remember last week saying something like, I'm not sure how into like the political intrigue of at Aden they might get, but based on the first scene of this episode where the parents are trying to talk to the security droids and figure out like, hey, can we help the kids? But and the droids say they can't because they're beyond the barrier.
Mm-hmm.
It does bring questions of like, why? How does this planet work? What's the deal? And so I think that is going to be the main like mystery going forward is like what is going on over there, because we see later there's more than just the currency and whatnot. With the fact that Fern still thinks Alderaan is a planet, there's a lot of mystery there.
Right. Yeah. So I am excited to dive into it because I think that the things that I felt like were the more obvious things that they might have been seeding. I'm very happy to see that we get some confirmation and some forward momentum on that. And the big picture stuff, I think, is the right stuff to keep present as the mystery of the show. We're still fresh into our Star Wars recaps here on Skeleton Crew. There's still there is 5 more episodes to go. I believe it's an 8-episode season, so 5 more weeks after that. So it's very helpful if you subscribe to either We Know Scripted TV or the Star Wars We Know Star Wars is actually the name of the feed. Which sometimes I'm doubtful that I know as much. We got a comment last week in the YouTube of like we need help from somebody's son who will tell us all of the things we need to know. I feel like we're pretty good, Owen. Every once in a while, I'm like, sorry, I don't know this very specific Star Wars thing. So feel free to support us. But collectively, you listening and us talking, we know Star Wars. So make sure you subscribe. It's very helpful.
Yep.
Also, ratings and reviews early.
The collective we. Yeah.
Is very helpful. There is news I do want to get into before we dive into Star Wars Skeleton Crew further, Owen. And it is news that I shared with you that was shared with me via one Josh Wigler, who is the one who gave you the name Owen Jedi Knight.
Oh my goodness.
And it
What
is
an honor.
quite shocking and astounding casting news in the world of Star Wars. We know that the Mandalorian and Grogu movie is on the way, and it's coming at some point, set in the same time period as Star Wars Skeleton Crew. And the major casting announcement is one of the greatest television actors of our current generation, highly acclaimed actor from The Bear, Jeremy Allen White, is of course playing, we all guessed it, we all had it on our bingo card, Jabba the Hutt's son, Owen.
When you sent me that, it's like an AI generated what the hell is going on. Like it's like a pop culture mashup that just makes no sense to me, but at the same time I'm so here for it. Like it just doesn't logically, I don't get it, and I'm trying to like figure out like how much of a voice changing kind of situation is going to be happening. But I think it's hilarious to think of a Hut screaming 55 burgers, 55 fries, all of that, just like,
Yes, chef.
um,
Yes,
yes,
chef.
chef. Yeah. So, it's fascinating, it's hilarious, and I'm sure it'll pan out well. He's a great actor, and I'm sure he'll be really able to like get into it. But just the visuals is hilarious.
So someone will explain this to me, Owen, and it might be you, but when I remember Jabba the Hutt from the movies, the original movies that he's in,
Mhm.
when I remember his voice, he doesn't speak English, right? He
Correct.
speaks another language or someone,
Huttese.
yeah, and he's
Mhm.
basically just like mumble, no disrespect to their language. It's a beautiful language, but he like, he's not. So like the decision to be like, aha, this character's son who shall appear, which I believe was there a Jabba the Hutt? Did he appear in Mandalorian? Am I misremembering this, or am I just like confusing all of
I
my
think there were other Hutts in the Mandalorian.
other
I don't
other
think it was
Hutts?
Jabba specifically. I
It
could be
wouldn't. It
wrong
couldn't
though.
be. It wouldn't be Jabba. Of course, it wouldn't be Jabba. But
Oh, right, it's
so
after, and he's dead. Yes, so yeah, it's like his cousins or something. I forget.
right, and they spoke like English common. What do we call? I don't know what we call it in the Star Wars universe, but this one to me is astounding because I don't think of Jeremy White as like that guy with the most recognizable voice and therefore the most like, and he kind of has this like way in which I feel like his voice is he's not monotone, but he's a very like he's almost like a very insecure person in the Bear. Obviously, he can perform in many
There's
other
like a
things.
sadness in his voice in the bear for
Yeah,
sure.
that's so funny
Um,
to be like, this is the guy we got to get to play Jabba the Hutt's son.
right, right. Bill Hader does a really good Hut impression, and I'm not even going to attempt one just because I can't. But
I
yeah,
was really
they
tempted
don't.
to do one Owen already,
I know,
but
I
yeah,
know, but I just can't. I can't. It's
I
too.
know.
I'm in California right now, so it's
Yeah,
too
it's
early.
early.
The coffee
Yeah.
hasn't set in, but yeah. So they're speaking Huttese, but then they do say like names as like the proper noun. So like if people like someone's speaking Spanglish or something, um. But yeah, I think it'll be funny potentially. But I honestly, if I didn't know about it, I probably would not have noticed. But now that I know, I probably will hear it and will be tickled by it probably.
Okay, fun. You know what? You know who I think this is a tremendous win for? Jeremy
Who's
Allen
that?
White. What a great choice to be like. All the headlines are like Jeremy Allen White is a Jabba the Hutt's son. Okay, and so his name is
Sure.
just all over this thing. He's only doing voice acting. He's not, that's what he's gonna do for this. This is a tremendous boon for Jeremy Allen White. I think this
That
is
is very
so
true.
fun. It makes him look
Although,
like a fun guy. I
yeah,
think. Yeah,
doesn't take himself too serious, willing to be a Hut. Yeah.
yeah,
Although, imagine how that call with your agent goes. And it's like,
yeah. That's right.
Jeremy, great news. I booked you Star Wars. It's like, oh
That's
my
right.
God, am I going to be like the next Han Solo? Like, am I a bounty hunter? Am I a gunslinger? And like, we got you Jabba the Hutt's son. And he's like, sure, cool.
And then he
If it was
replied back
me,
and
I'd
went,
be honored to
"Ooh,
be in
da,
any.
va, da, va, da, va, da." That's my Java. Is that my Java?
There
That's
you
my
go.
Java, I think. Yeah.
Love it.
Um,
Love it.
okay, well that's very fun. Well, good for Jeremy Allen. What this is, I think, is his first like I gotta double check that, but I think this is his first like franchise. I mean, I always like to think, oh, in which like this is like my question for the audience this week. Last week I asked how much continuity do you want between this project and the rest of Star Wars, and how much do you think will be in it? I like to think of like what's the like EGOT, but for like franchise IP. So like when you hit like
Mhm.
Marvel, Star Wars, like what are the other things that round out like the EGOT of like fantasy, sci-fi franchise worlds?
Mm.
I think we have to like there was a world where I wanted it to be Harry Potter, and I think I have to remove that one now from like I don't really
Got
it doesn't,
it.
although they're rebooting that, so maybe it counts again. I don't know.
Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah.
There was a period where Game of Thrones could have been in that conversation,
I know, I
but
know. Well, then they rebooted with House of the Dragon. They're doing another one next year. Maybe that is it. Maybe it's that. I don't know.
maybe.
All right, let's talk about Star Wars Skeleton Crew. Okay, let's start. I think the headline is the end of the episode. So I want to chat. I want to start there, I think, because we do get this reveal that he is, well, he's a Force user, but he's not a Jedi. And the one thing I do really love there's two things I love about this. One, Owen, is that I said last week, I don't think he's a Jedi. He never says, yes, I'm a Jedi. He says, can you keep a secret? Even at the beginning of this episode, they say, you have to go back. A Jedi never leaves a man behind. She says, you are a Jedi, right? And he says, course, like, of course. But then it's like, dot, dot, dot. I will go back. So he's not saying, of course I'm a Jedi. He's saying, of course I will go back. So this whole time I'm sitting there like, he's not a Jedi. He's not a Jedi, but he is a Force user, presumably. And so I think that this is fun because I think that I think if the whole season goes along, I think every week everyone's gonna be annoyed by me being like, he still hasn't said he's not a Jedi. Like, he's not a Jedi. How come the kids haven't realized it? But they basically cut me off with the pass, and they're like, nope, not a Jedi. Now the fun is like, okay, then what is he? Where is he from? Who is he? What's his background?
What's his deal? Yeah.
But we know for sure he's not a Jedi. So for me, I think that this is fun. And I think I'm seeing this in other properties where I feel like sometimes I'll come on and be like, aha, I figured out the whole season. Then the next episode, they're like, nope, that's just the mystery of last week. So I like this, Owen.
Yeah, it speeds it up, and it makes you it reduces the number of worlds you have to worry about and the number of questions, which to some people they might want to hang on to those questions longer. But for me, it was one that I think had a pretty simple answer, and almost like what we were talking about with the connectivity of the series, leaving that door open that he could be this mystery Jedi that was a Padawan being trained by so and so at the temple when he was a child. That's just do they have to do that again? So yeah, I'm glad they ripped the Band-Aid off. And in fact, they actually kind of said exactly what you've been saying when he said, I never said I was a Jedi. You said that.
That's right.
And so it was speaking directly to Grace there. So yeah, I'm all about it.
I actually wrote for the show, so I wrote for the
did,
show. Yeah, I'm a writer. Yep. No, I'm done.
Yeah, keep your eyes peeled in the credits.
Yeah.
But I should have known from the beginning, just because on Wikipedia, on the initial release, character summaries, it just says he's a Force user. They didn't specify anything beyond that. So maybe they wanted to leave it up for interpretation, but I'm glad the mystery's been solved.
No, I feel like there's a way in which 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if Star Wars Skeleton Crew gets made in the 90s, the whole season goes by, and the final reveal is I never said I was a Jedi. I don't think in 2024 you can do that. I just think there's too much we were talking about how we feel people are receptive to the show, which I think we can talk about at the end, and sort of how people are feeling about it. Because you and I are feeling one way, and there might be some differences out there, but generally it does feel like a lot of people are enjoying the show. But there's the way that shows work nowadays that are full of as much as people, because so the one thing people have been telling me is I thought it was a kid's show, and I'm yeah, there are kids in it. I don't know that it's way more of a kid show than Mandalorian was. There's a moment this episode where people are basically doing Star Wars hookah in the
You're right,
Owen. So it's
with the gas mask.
Yeah, I don't know that this is such a for young children. I think this is a show you can watch with your family, certainly, but it's PG rather than but what's Mando? I don't think Mando would be much more than PG probably. So I think in that sense, I think it's a show that, because they want kind of as many people to watch it, rather than it being specifically a kid show, there's a way in which they don't want to annoy people who go on Reddit afterwards or listen to a podcast, that's you out there listening, with a drawn out mystery that does seem pretty obvious, in a way that I just think we've seen so much television that you can't draw out, is he a Jedi, for a whole season. So I think very wisely we get the reveal this episode. Yeah. So my question then to you is he's also been called Crimson Jack this episode. Is that right? That's not the other captain, right? That's what he gets called. Yeah. And then he reveals his name to be Jude Nawood. Great name. Really great name. Is that his real name? Who is he? Who is he, Owen?
That's a great question, because I think Captain Silvo, he also gets called this episode as well.
Is Captain Silvo the other captain? Is Captain Silvo the werewolfy guy? Is that right? Or am I wrong?
No,
or is he Crimson Jack? Is he Jack Silvo?
I think he must be Jack Silvo, I guess. Maybe that's his pirate name. And then maybe Jude is his real name. And then Crimson Jack is his his pirate nickname. Who knows? But
he's Crimson Jack Silva. That makes sense to me, I think. But yeah,
it sounds very piratey. The Reddit comment I liked was Crimson from all the blood. Get it? It's
that's right.
Very on the nose pirate name. But yeah, I don't know. And I appreciate that the mystery is now where has he been? Why? What's his deal? Why is he so into? Is he just a pirate who's looking for treasure and wants to win back his crew? Or is there something deeper there? But like we've discussed, I'm glad it's not a whole is he a Jedi mystery. But he's quite charming. You can tell he's just like rolling with it, and just like anything someone says, he's just kind of like, yeah, sure, whatever you think, whatever you say. But I am glad that we saw the kids kind of stand up to him a little bit, and now that they got Smee fired back up, they've got their backup there, so they had a leg to stand on when they were kind of interrogating him a little bit. But I appreciate it. It was nice again when we saw the pairs of the children, like, Wim has this boyish, hope that he's encountered a Jedi, and that he's learning. But one thing I wanted to say on that kind of thread, we learned from this episode that the kids aren't aware of the war, right? So I
Right.
had said last week when we saw Wim playing with his action figures, like, oh, he's playing Luke Skywalker, he's about to make the run down to the trench to blow up the Death Star. They don't know about that. So I'm so curious, like, what Jedi lore he's aware of, and like what, like, history these kids have learned. Like, what are they learning in school? The kids brought up the question, like, what do their parents even do? So it is interesting that, like, yes, he's aware of the Jedi and he has this adoration for them, but he also, like, doesn't even know that there is a new Jedi out there. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. There's also a comment I want to note where the kids say two of the kids, their parents have the same job. Is that right? Did I catch that right?
The
So
analysts, yeah. I think it was KB's parents and Neil's parents.
Neil's parents. So kind of our like not I feel like we kind of have our main character and our sidekicks between like the boys and the girls. And I feel like both that's interesting to me in terms of that. Sticking back to Jaw just for a second, I do think I presume where we're going with this is, I mean, he does when he goes back and he sees the pirate who's like, he's just says, yeah, it's me. Like I'm getting out of here. Like, and he does allude to the fact that he is interested in exactly what we thought, that he, like, if he can find Ad-Atten, it would like restore, maybe not restore his pirate legacy as much as like he would just have a ton of money and can do whatever he wants, right? Is maybe
Why not both?
why not? But maybe what he wants to do is recapture his pirate crew. So he's gonna go and do that, and that to me, again, I'm really glad that like that revelation happens so quickly, and so he can do that. But it does feel like when he's like, no, I'm nobody. I'm exactly like you. Like I'm just lost. I don't know where. Like he doesn't know where he's from.
And
To
that felt
me,
very genuine.
yeah, I agree. I totally agree that it was like that to me feels real. And so whatever happened to him led him to a world where he's and this is the other piece I really love about this, which is saying he's not a Jedi plays into one of my favorite things that I believe happens in not Force Awakens, the second movie in the new trilogy, which is where there's a moment where a little boy is able to like move his broom. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you remember this scene? And I
Yes.
felt like that to me was one of the most, like, it's so small, but it said so much about the Star Wars universe. And unfortunately, I do feel like they kind of like they never went anywhere with that, and in fact did some things that like kind of are completely against the point of that. And this has been belabored all over the time in terms of the directors and the inconsistency of that last sequel trilogy. But what it said is like anybody can be a Jedi. Anybody can, be able to harness the Force. You don't have to have a Skywalker last name, or you don't have to be connected to this group in some way to be a Jedi. It's one of the things I think people get most annoyed about, right? By that last series is like everything has to be part of the Skywalker, which
Right.
is the
Oh, she's
Skywalker.
Palpatine's granddaughter. Yeah.
That's right. So whatever. But this to me is very fun of like thinking about a kid who grew up potentially at with the time of the rebellion in a way where like he kind of got lost in what happened. A lot of these young, obviously the young kids getting killed, the Jedi younglings, like what happened to him that made him lost, I think. And there's a very interesting way in which like I feel like the show could play with some deep themes though, and in terms of like the rebellion obviously happens as a good cause, but like, and there's a little bit of like Kylo stuff in here that you could have like, I don't think we're playing in that territory, but like the moral gray area of like what happened to all these people, like it was war. And so this idea that he doesn't know who he is and trying to figure that out and what he can do with that to me is like super interesting, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right that it speaks to like the depth of the world and the universe and like how many possibilities there are out there, and that could be something to explore. I don't think they will in this show, but just just having that as an option, I appreciated that. And not to bring up the video game on every single podcast, but
That's okay,
about
I love it.
Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, it does kind of give a character that's kind of in that sphere of how they make their way in the universe after. So yeah, there's a lot to be there, and I really liked Jude Law's performance this episode because I feel like that line delivery was where he finally took his walls down, and he wasn't going on with like the charismatic pirate bit. He was just like, this is me. Like I'm like it felt so genuine. I thought it was delivered well and just made sense in the moment.
Yeah, and so I think that the way that these two themes can intertwine is like uncovering the truth as he
Mhm.
uncovers the truth of who he is and how he is, was caught up in everything that's happened. These kids are going to learn the truth about what has been hidden from them based on their, living on that. What
Mhm.
part of the fact that they were part of the old republic, and don't know anything about the rebellion, and have no contact with the outside world, to me leads we're going to uncover truths about that while at the same time probably uncovering truths about Jod here. So I'm quite intrigued by that
Mhm.
piece of the story. um okay, so I did love the first, I mean, the scene where he goes back to get Smee is such, there's a, oh, and are you familiar with the show Taskmaster? And you don't have to be, but
I am not.
okay,
I've
so
heard of it, but I'm not really familiar with it.
Taskmaster is a show in which comedians get given a task that they have to do. And there was a comedian in one of the early seasons, and her catchphrase became it was just like bosh, like as in like you get the job done. You get a task, you get the job done, bosh. Like that's how you do it. And I really feel like the start of this episode, I was just like very inspired by the show Taskmaster because it was like he's like they're like, you got to go get him, and he's like, I don't want to go get him, and they're like, you got to, and he's like, fine, I'll go get him, and he goes in, he gets him, gets the job done, like not quite as cleanly as that, but that's to me what the essence of the beginning of the episode was. Sometimes I really love the simple storytelling of like it's so clear what he's going to do, and we're just gonna watch him do it.
Yeah, yeah, and I really like the sequence. It wasn't too drawn out, like you're kind of alluding to, and I really loved like the closing of the scene with the jump to hyperspace and then the fuel line whipping around and whatnot. Like I feel like often in Star Wars we see the jump to hyperspace, but we don't always see like what happens in the place they just left. Like
Right,
you might see someone
right.
like looking off and being like, drat, they got away, but like seeing the physical impact of what just happened I thought was really cool, and I was like, whoa, like that's kind of sick. And I think I finally pinned down what it is about Star Wars with me. Is like I love it. I've consumed so much of the media many times, but I don't have the same encyclopedic memory of exactly what happened in what movie or show the same way I do with like seasons of Survivor or whatever. So I'm sure there's someone listening being like, no, we saw this kind of same thing happen at the end of Attack of the Clones or whatever, but
Right.
whatever. It's more fun for me this way that I don't precisely remember everything.
Yeah. Actually, even the scene where they are leaving when they get out of the cave, and he's like, "So you could have done that." I thought this is like so good of just like being like, you can feel them like not in a clumsy way, but being like, "Oh, giant plot hole! Like we're filling this. We're like doing the work to like fill this in." Where he's like, where they say, "So if you had access to the Force, you could have just escaped at any time." And he said, "What's the point of an escape without an escape plan? Like a way to actually
With
leave?
a
I would
ship,
just be
yeah.
without a ship." So good. And very fun the moment where like they're like Wim doesn't want to tell you that the ship is like basically busted and broken. And he's like, I'm sure it's fine. And they turn the corner and see the ship.
Yeah,
And he's like, that's your ship. That was very fun.
yeah.
Um, so all of that and the two directions thing of like, do you want to go this way, which is empty, or do you want to go this way full of people? And the kid's instinct is to go the empty route. And he goes, much easier to blend in when there's a bunch of people. So all of that just to me was like fun. I thought I don't have
Mhm.
much to say other than that it just felt like it made sense, which is sometimes a
Yeah,
thing that like when you're watching a fantasy, space adventure, like sometimes you're like, oh, okay, like I guess I'm buying into it. But all of this stuff felt
right.
just very easy, very, very fun to watch. I really liked
Yeah,
this escape
100%
out.
with you. It's smart. It's
Yeah,
like it's nicely done and well paced too.
yeah. So they get Smee back. I've seen a lot of love for Smee this past week. SM33. I've seen a lot of love as like just a very good droid. People are loving him. You
Mhm.
feel similarly
No, I
after? Yeah.
No, I'm with all those people, and I just wanted to say this episode, I thought it was extra cool, just like the physicality of the droid, where he's kind of hunched down, but then
Right.
you saw him kind of stand up to Jod. Like I really loved that, and just the design. I love that Star Wars lately has been able to introduce new droid characters that all feel very different. Like even though his like coloration and general shape is kind of similar to K2SO from Rogue One, like they're so different. And I don't know. I just have a lot of fun with them. And Nick Frost, as we discussed last week, such a talented actor, so funny. Like I don't know. I'm really into it. I think they're calling him
Totally agree.
33.
They're calling him 33. Yeah, they're not going to
Yeah,
call him Smee. Maybe that's too on the nose.
the two on the
Um,
nose.
a
Yeah.
nose that he does not have, just at the eye socket. So yeah, I love the escape. The pirate captain, I think, is Captain Brutus, I believe, if I have that correctly. Which very good name. Almost like never called anyone Brutus before. Yeah.
Yeah, tough pirate name. Yeah.
I guess that's what happens when you also have characters called like Benjar Prenick. You're like, yeah, you haven't used Brutus before, or like Magnus or whatever, because it's like this guy's name is Frockley. You're like, yeah, this is too many names.
Or Kim.
Or Kim. But
And
do
they
you,
do
do you know how
the
Kim is
big
spelt? Yeah,
yes, like KHY''MM, I
I
think.
think KH''YMM. Perfect.
My
Great.
mistake. Sorry,
No,
Kim.
I have no notes. This is great. So yeah, this is where we go, which the kid obviously they want to go back to Aden. They do not have the route for it. So they're going to call on old friend Kim to go,
Mhm.
who immediately realizes, yeah, maybe I will say Kim being suspicious again, Kim being suspicious of Jod, but also the kids being suspicious of Jod immediately is very good. Because there's a world in which like you're like, these kids are just going to be oblivious, but because you have 4 of them as well, like I think if you have one of them, you can have one of them be like, I think if it's just Wim and Jod, Wim is like, not, he just thinks he's a
Wims.
Jedi. He thinks
Yeah,
he's a
he's
Jedi.
along for the ride. Yeah.
Yeah. But well, they're all along for the ride because they got stuck in a spaceship. That went wrong. But because there's 4 of them, I think you can play with this of like Fern and KB are not having that they think like they are right with us of like he has not said he's a Jedi. So let's interrogate this. And Kim also incredible character work here with the owl. I
Yeah,
loved Kim.
loved. I saw people were saying they're going to call her species a Mabian because she was voiced by Aaliyah Shawkat from
That's
Arrested Development.
amazing.
So I guess Kim's a Mabian for now, and I'm with that nomenclature.
So we get this scene that's like, yeah, she's going to sort of call in this call, but also they're gonna get away. But by the end of the episode, Kim is she's on the chase. The X-Wing, the pilot will not shoot it down because there's kids in it, which surprising, but I'm glad that's the decision he
Right.
made. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I appreciated that they explained like, we didn't want to risk with the children on board. Like, I don't know, there's like so frequently in Star Wars, like the constant running joke of like why stormtroopers have such bad accuracy. It's like the plot armor and this and that.
Right.
But for this, it's like, oh yeah, there was part of me that was scared that Wim was just like gonna giddily destroy an X-wing. Like I'm glad it didn't go that direction. But that part to me, that was a representation of like me at that age being like, man, I wish I could like fly an X-wing or like sit in the Millennium Falcon. Like that was cool. I could definitely empathize with his excitement there.
It is cool. So they do get the coordinates, and they are going to head off, seemingly. And Kim is on the chase to make sure that they are stopped. Do you think we're back at Ad next time? If it certainly feels like if the show is like the mystery of Ad and what it is, I guess we could go back this early. But if the whole thing is like the kids get sent on a spaceship away from Ad and can't get home, it feels a little early halfway through to get them back at Ad.
I'm with you. Perhaps something goes wrong with the coordinates they got. Those popped out pretty quickly for it being one of 10 legendary planets that have not been discovered. Like, I don't know. Maybe we'll see where they pop out when they get out of hyperspace. But
okay, no, but can we stick on this then? Because I feel like we've pretty much talked about most of the episode. We're only at 30. Like, there's not a ton here. Is there a type of, and this is another question for the audience, is there a type of planet that so say the coordinates lead them to not Ad and instead lead them somewhere else? Is there a thing you feel like you haven't seen in Star Wars that you would be like, oh my God, they're on this type of planet, or we see these type of creatures? Like, is there a thing you're like, wow, we could really check it off the, not that I don't think you have a Star Wars bucket list, but like,
I do not. But
yeah.
going back to the games one more time, in Jedi Survivor, this is part of the plot where there is this like hidden planet that requires a certain navigation, like I forget what they called it, but you had to find this artifact that had been programmed with the coordinates for this mystery planet, and like part of the plot is like trying to get to that planet. So I doubt they would go to that one specifically, but it's not unheard of that there are these like uncharted kind of areas. So I'm curious if Kim like gave them the right coordinates, or if she knew Jod was gonna, deceive her in some way. But she seemed to empathize with the kids, and they did kind of linger on that connection between Kim and KB. So perhaps there's something there to where they'll reconnect again later, especially with the casting of like a known actress like that. So I'm not sure, but no, I personally don't have a Star Wars bucket list, but I'm curious to see the comments as the week goes on.
Yeah, I feel like people might also have these things of like, oh, from this book, they should go to this planet or this thing. And then there's the other thing of like, what if they do something totally new we've never seen before? Like both options are on the table, and that's kind of fun. I'm hoping they end up in a planet. It's very okay. Imagine this, very jungle-like. Okay, they get crashed. We could also say maybe they get marooned. And there's a creature called a Pref Jost. Okay, and he's like, you're gonna have to stay here for 26 days. All the people who previously did it are like, oh man, you used to have to stay here for 39 days, but now you only have to stay here for 26. That's kind of like, that's not
Easy.
even, that's
Easy
easy,
money.
and then all the people who have to stay for like 26 are like, but you don't get it. I don't know. What would they say? Oh,
Less
and
food,
respond,
less food, less
less
blue milk.
food. It's
Yeah.
just as hard, if not harder, is what they
Yeah.
probably said. Yeah. They compete for immunity challenges. One of them wins. One of them gets to go home to AT-AT. I think that's what we're going to see next week.
Perfect.
I think.
Perfect. I love it. I'm
Yeah,
here for it.
on the precipice of the finale. Next week will be the finale of what's up with the 2-part finale, Owen? What's up with that? What's happening?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm all for them getting an extra episode, but I don't understand where they're going to break it up or like why. But
yeah, anyway. I heard it might be because the summit ended earlier than expected, and then they have to fill 2 weeks. They already billed it as the finale, and they had to that's a rumor I heard. So yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, I don't feel like I have a ton else here on this episode. That's kind of where we leave things. They're back. I feel like the biggest piece of the episode, probably for me, in terms of as I'm looking back at everything that happens, is, and I'm wondering whether this is a good time probably to talk about the reaction of the show over the past week, which I do feel like has people who watch it have been high on it. There's been this hesitation to watch it. And I'm actually wondering, this ties in quickly here with this point, which is that this week I think has significantly less kid content in terms of there's whole sequences of Jod trying to get 33 back. We have a lot of the Jod. The kids are there, but they are not, I would say, like solely in the spotlight like they are in episode 1, where like Wim wants to grow up and be a Jedi. He's late for the class. Fern's pod racing. We get the scene at the beginning with their parents kind of talking about them to a degree, and then they're certainly in the thing, but it's not a focus. And I do feel like the biggest thing people keep asking me is like, because I'll be like, are you watching? And they're like, I thought it was a kid's show. And again, I don't think that's it. So but generally I feel like you think the reaction has been pretty strong, or people are not watching yet. Is that right, Owen?
Yeah, I think some of my friends, they hadn't checked it out as of last week. I haven't followed up this week to be like, you should really watch it. But I was saying last week, like, I've been so pleased with the discourse I've seen on Reddit, mostly. Like, I'll, with almost any show I watch, I'll go like check an episode thread on that show's subreddit just to see what people are saying. And Star Wars fans are famously prickly when it comes to the IP that they love so much. And
name one time they were prickly, Owen.
No, never. But I've been pleased with the reaction, and I just think, I don't know, to me, is this the greatest show of all time? Absolutely not. But is it fun? Is it a great way to spend 40 minutes? Yes. And I think just some people, and this isn't specific to Star Wars fans, whether it's Survivor fans or anyone, just like some people just refuse to let themselves have fun. And that's that at that point, I can't help you. If this isn't fun for you, I'm not going to try to convince you it is. But if you're unwilling to try it because there's kids in the show, like, I don't know. That sounds like a personal problem to me.
Yeah, I agree with it. I agree with that take. I think that the reactions that I'm seeing are either I feel like I have not encountered many other real life human beings in real life who have watched it. I have one friend who watched it, who when we said today, when we were chatting about it in a group chat, and his brother asked him, "Oh, I thought it was a kid show," and he said, "If they didn't want me watching it, they shouldn't have cast Jude Law." So I think that that's kind of fair. Not like Jude Law is the biggest like all the children watch the show because Jude Law is in it.
Yes,
Um,
A-lister amongst Gen Alpha, yeah.
but my friend asked, has anybody else been watching it? Watched the first 2 episodes and it's super fun. Another friend said, all I know is Kid Elephant, and then not yet, but the trailers made it
Kid
look like a kid show. And so I responded. So I feel like those are the not a lot of people I know who've watched it. People who have not watched it yet and are kind of waiting to see what it is and whether it's good, which I will not blame people.
Mhm.
The Rotten Tomato score is a 96% critic score, which is very, very
Mhm.
good, an 81% popcorn meter, which is the audience score. I have heard of the occasional critic that I actually think is smart be like, I really don't like it. And I think that what they're hitting on of not liking it is a sense of my sense is, and they haven't really said this, but this is what I think it to be true, is they can appreciate that it's good, but that it's not really for them. And so within their opinion, it's not good. But that doesn't mean the show isn't good for the people who are watching it. Just in their
Mhm.
critical response of it, it's like, I'm not I don't really want to watch the 4 kids, roaming around. It's not
Mhm.
really there's a sum of like, is Star Wars really only capable of doing like the one thing that works, which is like an adult with a child or multiple children. I think there's a little bit of like feeling like it doesn't have the most originality, creative juice that
Mhm.
maybe they might be expecting from are like one of the greatest franchises of all time. Like created some of the greatest
Mhm.
and most iconic content in the history of so bad saying Star Wars is content, but some of the greatest media properties of all time, and a little bit being like, yeah, okay, yeah, I get it, but like, not for me, and I wish they
For
would
me,
do more. I think
yeah.
that's how I feel like these critics that I really admire who are feeling like, I don't know.
That's valid, and I'm never gonna tell anyone what they're allowed to like or not like, but I think that's where you get like I think life as a critic must be hard because you have to toe that line between what's objective and what's subjective, and, like, I'm sure, like, being critical your whole life and for your career leads those 2 worlds to blend so much that it's hard to, like, remove the subjectivity from the review of something objective, right? So, I think objectively, the show is fine, but I think subjectively to me, like, it's not trying to be, win the Emmy for best dramatic feature, right? It's just trying to be like cute and fun in Star Wars. And I think it's a success to me because it feels like Star Wars. Like
Right.
the world building is great, the characters are great, like there's like the element of wonder and excitement. And so to me, that's almost my litmus test for Star Wars these days is like, does it feel Star Warsy? And I don't
Right.
know. And then that in and of itself is subjective to people. So um I don't know. I just think to me, and I'm not bashing any of these critics, but to me, it's like, who cares? Like, just have fun. Just like, don't take it so seriously. I don't know.
I I agree with that. Uh Okay, I did ask last week about the connectivity stuff about like whether or not people, and I did get some answers where most people I think are in line with us, where their preference would be that it doesn't super connect to other stuff, but everybody realizes like there's no way in the modern age of franchise storytelling that it won't connect at some point. I think the thing that people are most hoping for is that either these are characters who then will go on to be in other things, like I think you could probably maybe put on your bingo card that Jude Law appears in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie that's coming out,
Mhm,
but that maybe
mhm.
there's not so much like let's fit it into this thing at the moment. But we'll see. And I think everyone just sort of understands like it's not like it seems plausible that Disney will probably have to do some of it, but the preference is like I want my own little self-contained
Yeah.
story.
Well,
Yeah.
we missed something, and I didn't notice this until looking at Wikipedia, but one of the pirates named Vane, whose name I
Yes.
only know because of reading it is has appeared in The Mandalorian already. So
Right.
um I appreciate that they aren't like hitting us over the head with it, and it's just like they're kind of there. But that could be my poor memory not remembering. But so there is a little bit of a tie-in. I'm just not 100% sure the years and where exactly are we in the timeline. I don't know if that's been specified quite yet. Like where is Mando right now? But
Yeah, I don't think we know that either. I think intentionally, like AT-AT is such like, held in time. And then
mhm,
nobody's been like, it's not like a time travel show where they're like, what year is it? He's like, it's 1292, or whatever the years
right.
are in Star Wars. So yeah, there's no need to do that until it's like important, and it just frees them up.
Oh yeah, because they don't even have a Battle of Yavin to set as their like
Right,
grounding for their yearing
right.
system. That's fascinating.
If folks are looking to do more Easter eggs, there's a really great YouTube, and they have a Blue Sky account called Star Wars Explained. I found a fun little thread that he basically translated all of Wim's stories in his like iPad little thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and then there's a full video about all the Easter eggs that you can find in episodes 1 and 2, and I'm sure he'll do it for episode 3 as well. It's very fun. I hesitate though to say I feel like but if you're listening to this, I feel like you're like so close to there. I think that we're at a level where I hope we're speculating in a fun way, in a way that like I don't know enough to be able to be like, and this is the thing that's happening. I'm having trouble with that with Dune. And I feel like I have to really hold
Mhm.
myself back because I'm like, I think they're just going to do this thing for this thing. I don't know enough here, but if you're looking to be more enveloped in what's happening in the show, I would recommend Star Wars Explained on YouTube and on Blue Sky, probably on Twitter as well, but I'm not going to recommend that. All right. Anything else, Owen, before we wrap up here today on
Last thing
episode
is
3?
Neil snoring.
Neil snoring.
Just was fantastic. And
Very good.
here for all the Neil content. The last question I'll ask you is where do you think we're headed with the secret of AT-AT? Is it being run by droids? Is it like is the supervisor a real person? Like, do you want to put a theory down for record now?
Oh, I mean, I know that like Wicked is all over it's playing in the theaters, but it feels like the supervisor could have some real Oz energy in terms of
Mhm,
pulling behind the curtain and realizing who it is. This to me is the thread that I am most scared to pull, Owen, because I
mhm,
think that there's a way in which like it's just kind of a fun, jaunty reveal, or it is so significantly important to everything else that happens for whatever
mhm.
they decide to do with Star Wars Skeleton Crew, whether it gets renewed or the properties get like cross
Merged,
integrated.
yeah.
Yeah, because it does feel like if they're like, actually, it's Palpatine. You're like, oh man, like,
Oh,
oh, which it like it. I don't think it's not that, but like that type of thing
yeah.
of, and it does feel like it probably ends up having to be something related to what eventually happens in the sequel movies, where the the new it does, yeah, it feels like it probably has to be right. I don't know. I
Something.
don't know.
I
What do you think?
probably. I think it'll be more setup-ish than it will be fan servicey, linking back to like the original stuff. So we'll see. But to me, you mentioned Wicked and Oz. To me, it like is reminiscent of like Fallout and kind of
Okay.
how the
Yeah.
shelters have different like purposes and theories, and like to me, it's something nefarious like that. But I'm with you. I'm hopeful it's not too like, aha, it was this the whole time. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah,
And
well,
these are
there's two things here on, right? It's like who has decided that they would do this, and then for what reason.
right.
So what are they doing on AT-AT, and that's so important that it has to be blocked, and who is in charge of whatever that thing is that they're doing. So those are where my theories start to
Yeah.
lead down. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll find
How
out
how does Palpatine return in Star Wars? Like,
somehow.
now
Somehow.
I know it's somehow, but actually, how do they like? What happens that he like? Isn't there some power the source keeping him like? Are we? I don't know. Doesn't
I don't
matter.
know.
Doesn't matter.
Maybe he programmed the droids to, maintain this society while he was still, I don't know.
The biggest thing for me about Ad is that you don't hire both Kerry Condon and Tunde Adambimpe to be part of the storyline without there being something there that's like actually pretty significant. So yeah. Okay. Very fun. If people have theories, also let us know. It doesn't seem like you could spoil us on this. I guess you could with a very accurate theory that turns out to be right, but I don't think that's spoiling it. So let us know in the comments, or you can message us on Blue Sky, or I'm still in the post-show recaps Discord. That's where a lot of folks messaged me this last week. So yeah. What else you got going on, Owen?
Not much. I've been doing a lot of Survivor podcasts just because I put them all in December. So I was at the Houston live show. I did one with Phil of the Survivor Specialist this past week. And then I think I've got a couple ones coming up this week. I'll be doing Survivor Top 10 with Dave Jorgensen, which is it's a smaller pod, but
that's great.
Big fan of Dave. And then hopefully doing another one next week. So yeah, a lot of Survivor talk. I'm on Blue Sky. My handle's there, The Young Knight. It's my Instagram as well. And yeah, just doing my job as well. So about to go do a scholarship selection committee. Very excited.
Oh man, those real jobs, eh? Stop us from talking about Survivor and Star Wars as much as we'd like to.
Yeah, I wish.
All right, here on We Know Scripted TV, I'm also doing recaps of Silo and Dune Prophecy. Ariel, from my former post-show recaps theater co-host, joined me to talk about Dune this week. There should be a Wicked pod dropping at some point in the feed, so that should be fun. And then of course the Tastemakers, we have TV for Real, which you've appeared on. People could go check out your episode of that. We have the weekend program and so much more, so make sure you're subscribed both to the podcast feed, and if you want to check us out on YouTube, you can do that. WeKnowScriptedTV.com. We'll get you all of those links. We'll be back next week with our episode 4 recap. We'll be halfway through the season by then, so we'll see you all then. Until next time, may the force be with you.